Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of the Echo from the Buttes podcast. I am your host, David Howman, joined by my two great co-hosts, Austin Bundy and Andrew Hazlett. And Tom Harton is not here, and I don't think that this has ever happened in the history of the show where he's not been on here for one of our episodes. He's our constant, he's our man that's always here. And no, it is not a sign that he's entered the transfer portal like so many other Sun Devils that are doing it right now. He will be back, but we just got to work out some NIL deals for him first. We got a good show, though. We got, transfer portal madness. We got, some football updates to talk about. Baseball is going strong. First, before we get into all that, Austin, Andrew, how are y'all doing?
I'm doing good.
Yep, doing all right. I'm still here. That'll convince the folks back home.
Yeah. Blink twice if you're under duress. For those that are just listening, he did not blink at all. I don't know what that means. But we, starting off with Sun Devil basketball, though, there's a lot in flux right now. They have a new coach, Randy Bennett, who we have not seen. Well, we've seen him. We haven't heard from him. ASU put out their video of him coming off the plane, him seeing the facilities. Molly Miller gave him a big hug, and then immediately he was too sick for his press conference, and we have not seen him since. Some people are more concerned about it than others, but there's a new coach in town. He's added 3 new assistant coaches, and transfer portal is open as of earlier this week. Sun Devils are losing players. They are talking to some players. They have not added anybody yet. But there's a lot going on right now, the biggest of them being their freshman phenom big man, Masamba Diop, entered the portal on Wednesday after giving some people hope with some of his Instagram posts, which, if you're anything like me, you know that the moment you start feeling hopeful about something is the moment when that player's going to leave. So... Austin, how concerned are you at both Diop but also some of the other players that have left, like Santiago Truitt, who entered the portal on Thursday, Noah Mayusin, and just in general where things stand right now with this roster?
I would say I'm mildly concerned, but not surprised. This was Bobby Hurley's roster. You really hoped that Randy Bennett would be enough of a big name, enough of a successful reputation with St. Mary's to convince some of those bigger names to stick back, give him a chance, give the program a chance. But you also can't blame guys like Diop and others who are leaping at more lucrative opportunities. This is the era of NIL. This is the era of eventually revenue sharing, and we've seen it before where guys who really make a name for themselves here at ASU, they put their names on the map. They get the attention of some of these other bigger programs, and when they have an opportunity to go jump and go play for a team that, let's be real, can actually win a national championship, can compete for some kind of silverware, some kind of title, and at the end of the day, get them in front of the most NBA scout eyes as possible. So it's not surprising. It stinks for ASU, but you also kind of have to realize new coach, new regime, it's going to take a little time to build something. There were always going to be growing pains. He's got a new staff. You're going to have to go out on the recruiting trail now and go and prove to these recruits, their parents, their agents, that ASU is the best possible opportunity for them under Randy Bennett. And hopefully guys like James Harden, others can potentially step in with some NIL funds and spice up that side of the deal to help bring more guys in. And I mean, besides that, I think it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for Randy Bennett now, without having these big stars, having more roster spots open, to now and go out and maybe look at some of these gems in the rough that he maybe saw on the recruiting trail, couldn't get to come to St. Mary's. Maybe they want to come with him now to a Power 4 program. You never know. So there's a lot of opportunity here too for ASU, and I'm confident that with a new regime, had this been Bobby Hurley year 11, then I think this would have been a much different story on the recruiting trail. But now that we have Randy Bennett, somebody who has a lot more proven success, better track record, a staff that is levels more respectable than what we've had before, which was no shade to Bobby Hurley. I mean, he did what he could, but this is just a whole new chapter in ASU basketball, and I think there's a great opportunity here to build something special.
Yeah, it's funny because like this last year was not exactly a good year for Sun Devil basketball, but now it's like, Jop enters the portal and Mayusin enters the portal, and suddenly everyone's like, "Oh my God, we're losing all these good players." And it's like, not that they're not good players. Like, it would have been nice, obviously, to hold on to Jop. I would have liked to see Mayusin stick around, but it's not like, it's not like you were a tournament team and you're losing all your guys, and it's like, oh my God, now we're not gonna. This team finished 11th in the Big 12, and honestly, they were punching above their weight to finish 11th, given what the Big 12 has. So, for what it's worth, the news a little bit before we hopped on here was that the two teams to watch that are most in on Jop right now are Gonzaga and St. John's. This report specifically noting that Rick Pitino sees Jop as being like the premier defensive centerpiece for his team next year. So it like, when you think about those two schools and the caliber that they have, and the fact that, like, unless something goes horribly wrong, either of those teams is going to be in the tournament, it's easy to see why Masamba Jop was not going to stick around. Andrew, one of the big reasons that Randy Bennett had so much success at St. Mary's was he found those diamonds in the rough. He found guys that were not 5 stars, were not like on everybody's radar, but he found guys that fit into his system. And so I kind of go back and forth on this. I'm like, should we be concerned that he's not coming in and bringing big names with him? Because you would think, obviously he's a high profile, he's a proven coach, he's got more resources now than he did at St. Mary's. But at the same time, like, why is he going to switch up what's clearly been working for him in terms of going after the type of player that fits him versus just going after, who's got the biggest name?
Yeah, I want to go back to your previous point, David, on the two schools Jop was looking at. A former Sun Devil from the previous year's team went to those schools, and Adam Miller going to Gonzaga, and Joe Sansanen heading to St. John. So those schools don't surprise me at all as possibilities for Jop. Going back to your question, David, to me at this point we don't know. We don't know what he's going to do at this point because we haven't seen him bring in a player at this point. It's hard to say, oh yeah, he's sticking to his strategy or not. The question is, should he be? I don't know. It's very complex working something. It's a change of scenery. You're coming into a place where you've got to lay the foundation, and to me at this point, it depends how you want to do. You could go get some big guys, but I think your diamonds in the rough. Someone's got to start building this theoretical house if you want to win Big 12 championships and potentially national championships. You got to build that, and I think with pieces, setting an identity is the better way to do that long term. I think short term big names are fun, but I don't think that is going to relate to long term success, in my opinion.
Right. Well, and I know like a lot of people on the interwebs have expressed some concern, especially that we're not immediately hearing, oh, all these St. Mary's players are transferring over here. Mikey Lewis is in the transfer portal, Dylan Shaw's in the transfer portal, Andrew McKeever, their center, and then of course the big one is Paulius Morauskas, who a Lithuanian like stretch 4, who originally committed to the school down south, played a year there, thought better of his choices and went to St. Mary's. And Morauskas was always going to be a tough pull because he is one of the 5 highest rated players on the transfer portal right now, depending on which site you look at. And I know Kentucky is hard pursuing him. A lot of other those blue blood schools with very, very deep pockets, they really want to get him.
I'm surprised Illinois is not going after him. They love the Eastern Europeans.
I'm sure they are. He would fit right in there, but he's gonna get a lot of money wherever he goes, and like the concept of him coming to Arizona State either means James Harden is writing him a, giving him his last game check basically, or he's taking a huge pay cut just because he wants to come play for this coach he spent 1 year under. But like Mikey Lewis is also gonna be. He's probably going to get a good amount of money to go somewhere else. And so like I know there's concerns about, well, why don't his own players want to keep playing for him? I think part of it is they're going to go get paid. But also, why are they getting paid? Because they were in Randy Bennett's system. Like they were not, Morauskas was a pretty good get when St. Mary's got him, to go from a program with that, as much as it pains me, that much prestige, to St. Mary's. That was a big pull for St. Mary's, but most of these other guys were, they were not huge names in the recruiting trail. They came to St. Mary's and then they blew up. So again, that makes me feel a little bit better about, like guys are getting paid because they played under Randy Bennett. They're not necessarily, it's not that they're going to get paid to play under Randy Bennett. It kind of goes a different, doesn't work that way. It's very similar, I think, what Kenny Dillingham has talked about. He said in the past he doesn't want to use NIL just to get players in the door. He wants to bring them in, put them in the right situation, and then they get paid, hopefully here at Arizona State. But they got to earn their keep first. And, obviously it's worked very well for Kenny Dillingham. At least in California at St. Mary's, it worked very well for Randy Bennett. We'll see how it works at Arizona State. Andrew, I do have to correct you, though. He has brought in one player. He flipped the high school commit, J. Rob Croy, whose recruit profile picture I love. If you guys haven't seen it, look up J. Rob Croy on 24/7 Sports. He's got a bandage on his forehead because, I don't know, he must have been in some fight right before the picture, and he said, nah, just take the picture. But J. Rob Croy, a combo guard, 4-star commit, flipped from St. Mary's to Arizona State like the day after Bennett was announced. And that also brings me into the other thing I want to talk about, which is this coaching staff, because his father, Rick Croy, is now on the Arizona State staff. And Austin, you mentioned before this staff and its qualifications. Rick Croy left his job as head coach at Cal Baptist right after taking them to the tournament to come be on this staff. They also just announced David Patrick, who, if his first name is David, you already know he's great at what he does. So, but he left LSU. He was their top recruiter there. He's been at LSU before. He helped land Ben Simmons at LSU back in the day. He is an Australian. He was part of Randy Bennett's staff early at St. Mary's and helped build that Australian pipeline that has been so successful for St. Mary's. And then Joe Rahan, who's been one of Bennett's right-hand men at St. Mary's for several years, played point guard at St. Mary's back in the day. So they have a staff with 3 very experienced coaches, very successful coaches in their own right, all of whom have ties to Randy Bennett. In one way or another, that staff right there is very accomplished. And again, no disrespect to Bobby Hurley and the staffs that he's put together, but it knocks them out of the park in terms of what they have on their resume.
I want to go back to the point you made about the fact that Randy Bennett has developed a lot of these players, and then they go get paid, and now they've got their names on the map. I think the problem maybe when you look at that and you look at what Bobby Hurley was doing, Bobby Hurley was bringing in a lot of these big names. He's brought in a lot of 5-stars. He's brought in a couple NBA lottery picks. I think the problem was getting all these big names together. Yeah, you have them all on the same sheet of paper now, but when they went out and hit the hardwood, they didn't gel. They did not play like a cohesive unit that knew or was developed in order to play off of each other's strengths. And I think people have to give Randy Bennett the opportunity and the benefit of the doubt here that he can bring whoever into Tempe, develop them, and we're eventually going to be talking about them every day on this program. You know, like they're going to be guys that we're going to now realize, like, oh, yeah, like this is our star player. Like we haven't heard anything about him before. College basketball world didn't know much about him before, but now everybody's talking about him. To me, I feel like it's kind of got to go back to the day, like the Remy Martin days. Nobody knew about Remy Martin until they went and blew the doors off Kansas, even though we knew about him for a year or two at that point. But it's got to be one of those instances where Randy Bennett kind of has to work in the shadows here with a group of guys, a group of no-names, quote-unquote, that are going to eventually show up and beat a top-ranked team on national television and get everyone's attention.
Yeah, and you know, and Arizona State hasn't landed any transfers yet since the portal opened up, but they also, it's not like they're doing nothing. You know, I think I think a lot of us kind of, you know, we get high on the energy of NFL free agency and like their legal tampering period, where you get just an influx of news like every 2 minutes about this team signing this player and they're, you know, trading picks to this team. You know, they gave this much guaranteed money, and like you can't even comprehend that much money. Transfer portal isn't always like that. You know, a lot of times these guys, not to say that there's not tampering, because we know there is, but a lot of these guys, especially nowadays, they're trying to maximize their playing time because the NBA is not that far away for most of these basketball players. It's a little different in football, but in basketball, it's like I want to get to the team who I'm going to be able to play in March Madness on a big scale, and people are typically going to take their time. I mean, we were talking about Morauskas, and like he's this hot commodity, and everybody wants him. He hasn't made a decision yet, and it doesn't sound like he's particularly close to making a decision. You know, and you know, close being relative, of course, but he's got a lot of different teams to hear out. And a lot of these players that ASU is talking to are kind of in the same vein. They're talking to different teams. They're trying to identify, especially when weighing an opportunity like Arizona State. You know, there's obvious pros. You're going to be in the Big 12. You're going to get to be coached by somebody like Randy Bennett, who has sent players to the NBA, who wins and wins and wins, has been in the tournament the last 5 years. But then also, like, there's the downsides of ASU basketball is ASU basketball. And also kind of on the flip side, you're in the Big 12. So it's going to be tough. Every single game is going to be a NCAA tournament environment, just in terms of how hard you have to play to win that game. Whereas, you know, you could go to some other programs where you'll be able to start, you'll be able to play, and competition might not be as tough, but you can put up some really good film. Of course, this is a great time to shamelessly plug Devils in Detail, where we have a live transfer portal tracker, and there's a bunch of different names that ASU has been connected to. Couple of guys that piqued my interest is Brady Henage, who was the starting center for Cal Baptist this last year. Of course, as we mentioned, the Cal Baptist head coach is now in Tempe. Jordan Ross, point guard who just finished this last year at Georgia, but before that he was a star at St. Mary's. He transferred out of St. Mary's. Again, another guy that Randy Bennett helped get paid. He went to Georgia, but, you know, Georgia basketball is Georgia basketball. Now he has an opportunity to come back to play for Randy Bennett, where he was doing really well, but also be on a higher stage than what St. Mary's has to offer. And then one other guy that I'm, you know, kind of keeping my fingers crossed on is his name's Victorious Miller, which right there, great name. This guy just recently entered the portal. He's a shooting guard. He originally played his high school ball in Arizona, in Chandler, at AZ Compass Prep, which is one of the premier prep school basketball programs in Arizona. Ended up getting or committing to LSU. And at the time, the guy who recruited him was David Patrick, who's now part of Arizona State staff. He averaged 8.9 points coming off the bench his freshman year, transferred to Oklahoma State because they guaranteed him a starting role. Averaged 10.8 points a game, shot 37.5 from three-point arc. So good player, very much a score-first type of shooting guard, but has connections to Arizona, has connections to David Patrick. And now that he's in the portal, seems like that could be a very, very, very good fit for this team.
Sounds like he's destined for Oklahoma Coastal then. But on a more serious note, the thing I want to add about with the transfer portal with a lot of these guys that haven't committed yet, a lot of people are worried that we haven't seen a lot of big names go to ASU just yet. There's a lot of guys that enter the portal with a do not contact tag, and a lot of people mistake that for they're entering the portal with that tag and just want to see what their options are and then not really have to deal with any of the craziness that comes with it. But in more cases than not, entering the portal with a do not contact is essentially the big flag of I've already been speaking to somebody and I know where I'm going, so don't try. It's the illegal tampering period, as we would probably call it, that happens behind the scenes.
Which definitely doesn't happen.
No, for sure. But a lot of those guys, especially with Jop going in with a do not contact tag, I mean that should just automatically tell people, all right, he already knows where he's going. He's already picked Gonzaga or St. John's, or it's just those two that he's speaking to and doesn't want anybody else to make an offer at this point. So there could be a couple guys who are in that same situation right now with ASU and maybe another school that they're having to decide between. And at this point, the reason we haven't heard from them is because they're just taking their sweet time considering what their options are. And they're more than likely going to get a hefty paycheck wherever they go, or they're these guys that want their next opportunity to prove and then get paid. So hopefully they decide Tempe is that proving ground for themselves.
Yeah, one other player that has been connected in the portal to Arizona State, and I want to bring this guy up just because I like his name, Johan Munch. He's in the portal from Oregon State, which, I mean, I feel like we all missed an opportunity for a guy named Munch playing for the Beavers. I'll keep it PG. This is a family show. But I think that should have been a bigger story, and if the Pac-12 still existed, it would have been a bigger story. So I'm really upset about that. But having Johan Munch on your team at Arizona State, there's also a TCU player whose last name is Punch, and I think whoever gets these two players should be the same team, so you can have Punch and Munch, just for the rhyming.
Punch.
And he's a good player, too. He averaged 7.9 points, 5.1 rebounds at Oregon State. He's a sophomore. A lot of people think his potential is much higher than that. So, Johan Munch, great name, good player. Probably better than a good player, but somebody else to keep an eye on. Sticking with the same...
For all those, all of our German listeners or our Eastern European listeners are probably yelling at us, it's Monk, you idiot. It's Monk.
Well, this guy's Danish, so I don't know how they pronounce that in...
Same way, Monk.
Is it?
Johan Monk.
Okay. I'm cultured, so I obviously know how to pronounce it. But sticking in the same category, though, in college basketball, men's basketball, we'd be remiss if we didn't bring up the conclusion of March Madness, specifically the Final Four, and a certain team out of the state of Arizona that did not do very, very well in the Final Four. Was anybody else just as thrilled as I was watching that Michigan-Arizona game?
I was not watching. I was busy calling the baseball game that was happening between Arizona State and Arizona. So
that is a valid reason to not be watching.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a second, but I was watching, and I was happy with the result from an ASU standpoint, but as I said prior to us coming on air here, I did pick Arizona to win it all in my office bracket pool. I did it to jinx them, and eventually it worked. Eventually we got there, but I was the only one in the office to have picked them, so I got to a point where I thought, oh wow, the Wildcats might actually get this done for me.
How would you have felt?
Pretty icky.
Yeah. Yeah, I was on cloud nine watching that game. I was having so much fun. It's one of the best hate watches I've ever had in my life. At one point, they put up the little banner at the bottom that said, like, this is the largest deficit Arizona's had all year, and I started just clapping. I was just having so much fun. We said before we started recording, I said, like, Michigan is my new favorite Big Ten team. They've done so much for us recently. Hiring Kyle Whittingham away from Utah, destabilizing both the Utes and the BYU Cougars, and now they do this to Arizona basketball. You know, they spent all those years trying to get back to the Final Four. They finally do it, and they just lay an egg for everybody to see. It was such a great... And the best part was that Tommy Lloyd, their coach, negotiated that big contract extension, doesn't even report to the AD anymore. The day before, he gets just absolutely mollywopped. Oh, man. It was a great time. Austin and I had a lot of fun watching it. Andrew, as you mentioned, you were not watching it. You had more important things to tend to, including, similarly, another L for the team down south. Tell us about Sun Devil baseball.
Yeah, Sun Devil baseball over the weekend took 2 out of 3 from the Wildcats in Tucson, which is right now, again, in the Bloomquist and Hale timeline, because they were both hired in the same year. Now it's an even split in terms of wins and losses for each team at 500, so that balances out. First Sun Devil series win in Tucson in a long time. 15 runs was the most runs scored in Tucson since I want to say in the late 2000s. That's the last time they've scored that many runs down there. Sun Devils get a season series victory. They're right now 3-1 over the Wildcats. There's a game next Monday. That's the final game of the year scheduled. Possibly they could meet in the Big 12 tournament, but by the way, the Arizona's playing, they're not going to make the tournament, but that could change. So yeah, a good weekend. The guy that kind of caught my eye the whole weekend was Matt Polk. It's been kind of a revolving door at center field. You've had Dean Toigo play right field more often than not, and then you've had Landon Hairston play left field more often than not. They've both had time at center as well. But that third outfield position's kind of been a revolving door. Matt Polk has appeared to get it as of late. He's been getting a lot of contact. Had a pinch hit appearance late in the Friday game, because that was the second game of the series. Converted there, got a hit. Played pretty well on Saturday. Had a good game Tuesday. I'm not quite sure when, and Wednesday I wasn't able to catch that game, but he's been a hot bat for the Sun Devils to kind of shore up that final outfield position, because we all know what Landon Hairston's doing. He's been on the tear, arguably the best hitter in college baseball right now. And then Dean Toigo, who is, to me, emerged as arguably the next best batter. He's had a lot of home runs this season too. 13, only 6 behind Landon Hairston, who is, last I checked, one off the lead. That was after Tuesday. I do know that the leader did play on Wednesday. I wasn't sure if he got a hit or home run or not, but just shows you he's having a good season. An OPS over 1. So he's done really good. And the one thing that does concern me about this team is what we saw on Friday night, bullpen pitching. Cole Carlone, he threw the ball well, no runs in 6 innings, had a lead of, I believe, 4 runs, if memory serves me correctly, and then immediately they throw out 3 different guys, 7 run score in the 7th inning, all of a sudden you're down, you lose that game. That's concerning to me. I don't know about you guys, but that's something that is, if something derails its team, it's probably going to be that.
Yeah, I mean that's been the story the last few years. Is even when they've had good, solid starting pitchers, it's what happens when they sub out. And I think overall this year we've seen a lot more moments where it holds better than it has in the past. And like it almost got me to a point where I felt like yeah, we're beyond this. And then of course, because that's just life as a Sun Devil fan, the moment you think you're past it, it comes back to get you. And so it definitely is concerning. And but the thing that I keep going back to is they just have such depth this year in the bullpen that it feels like they're going to have an answer. We're kind of at the point where they should have a better understanding of who they can go to, who they can rely on. And I don't know. I feel cautiously optimistic there. Andrew, to your point about Landon Hairston, I looked it up. He's still second for home runs, but he's second in batting average. He also leads the nation in slugging percentage, which is not even the least bit surprising. He's having a heck of a year. Reminds me of the golden days of Spencer Torkelson, going back to just how ridiculous he was, and it's crazy how much Landon Harrison has grown from last year, because you could always see the power in how he hits, but it was just the consistency, and now he's just. I mean, I expected some growth from him, but I didn't expect this. So it's been a treat to watch him play so far this year.
I've said it before on this program, but he's put on weight, and I think that's the muscle has shown, because this point last year, I don't think he had a home run. It took him to April. I know that for sure. I'm not quite sure where the dates lined up when he did have his first home run in, I believe, that Cincinnati series. But he's broken out this year in his power. He isn't just hitting home runs. He's hitting doubles too. He's still getting his singles. He's drawing his walks as well. He's had a few triples even. So he is a complete hitter. He isn't fast, but he moves quickly. He can steal bases for you when you need it. Truly a well-rounded hitter at this level who can do everything. Which, as someone who enjoys baseball, and I see a guy who has multiple paths of being successful at the professional level. He could be a guy who hits a lot of home runs, or he could be a contact guy who steals bases. I don't know yet, or it could be in the middle of these two. I don't know. But he has a path to all three, which is really key for him.
Yeah, and going back to the pitching questions too, I looked it up. In terms of team ERA, they're 99th in team earned run average, which is not necessarily where you want to be, but it's also not terrible. But in strikeouts per 9 innings, they're tied for 12th. So they're kind of like it's a little bit of feast or famine. They're either striking you out, or they're going to give up some runs here and there. And when you see guys like Cole Carlone, Cole Klecker, like some of these guys that they have up on the mound, I mean, it's not entirely surprising. We saw that last year too with Jack Martinez and Ben Jacobs. They had heat for days, but then they would get into ruts where they give up 4 runs in an inning, and so it's that makes it frustrating, because it feels like there's so much more potential there. You throw just a 100-mile-an-hour heater, and there's nothing that the hitter can do, but then the very next play it gets blasted out to right field, and so it's, I don't know. I'm not a pitching expert, so I can't necessarily offer any tips, but that's where that kind of, I think, illustrates the issue. Is they're really great at getting strikeouts, but beyond that, it's kind of been a mixed bag. But when you have some, the hitters that they have, and you play in a ballpark like Phoenix Muni, you're going to be able to make up for a lot of that most of the time.
What that last point that you said, when you play in a ballpark like Phoenix Muni, David, you're going to hit home runs, but you're also going to give up home runs. That's just the nature of the beast, and that isn't super concerning to me. Which I do want to kind of segue into these midweek games here that ASU played. They played two, and it was kind of two very similar stories with different results. GCU down early, pitching struggled. They were down 7-0 at one point. Came back, rallied, hit home run after home run after home run, scored all 12 runs that they scored off the long ball, David. That's something. And this is at GCU too, away from your home stadium. I might have won 12-8 at the end of the night. Had a good performance. As you can guess, Landon Hairston hit a home run. Dean Toigo hit a home run. Dom Smaldino hit his second home run at that point as many games. You also had PJ Moutsouridis hit a home run, but the guy that was the hero of the game once again against GCU, Cohen Nikolai, a pair of home runs with one being a grand slam. I remind you that in the midweek at Muni earlier in the year, Nikolai hit the game tying home run and then the walk-off single. So he's a guy that's, if you were to ask him, he might want to play GCU 50 times a year by the way he's hitting the ball. And then against UNLV, a 5-7 loss, got down early and just couldn't come back. Actually kind of got down in the middle of the game. They allowed 6 runs in the 3rd through 5th inning and couldn't quite come back from that. Matt Polk did have an RBI single. He's been hitting the ball well, like I said. Austin Musso started, gave up 2 runs in 3 innings, which is fine. That's what you wanted. That's fine from a freshman pitcher. But Josh Butler, who had been one of the more consistent arms, gave up 4 runs. Only 3 of them were earned, and 1 in the 3rd before the rest of the bullpen only gave up 1 run. Which is interesting. If you'd have asked me going into this last week, I would have felt more confident in the bullpen than I do now, because I see Sean Fitzpatrick give up a few runs. Finn Edwards, Colby Guy, Josh Butler. Your 4 biggest guys, your best guys out of the pen, kind of struggle, which is unfortunate to see. And Taylor Penn, who's your other guy, he's moved to your starting role at this point. I'd imagine moving forward. So it'll be interesting to see how the Sun Devils kind of reshape their pen if they do, because you move Alex Overbay into things, kind of throw some of these other guys around. Jaden Alba's been pitching well as of late. I don't know what the answer is, but that's something you want to address. And only two losses for the Sun Devils in midweek so far. They got 4 left. Last year they had 6 total, which is something they struggled with. The midweek improvement it has been good for the Sun Devils, and midweeks are always chaos.
Yeah, and it's always, especially from the pitching standpoint, because you're not necessarily going with your aces in those games, and even the guys that do start, you're probably not counting on them to provide a whole lot of innings pitched. And then that was the case in both of these games. And, like you said, they're mixing things up. They're shifting it up. And which, again, the fact that they have so many guys that they can kind of be mixing things around at this point in the season is a positive. But I also wonder if if maybe there's too much change going on, and you got to get to a point where guys can settle into their roles a bit better. But all in all, I mean, I feel like we're we're too doom and gloom talking about the pitching right now. It's been good, and they're doing pretty well as far as their standing in the Big 12. As of right now, they're tied for fourth, tied with TCU and Baylor, but they have a slight tiebreaker right now. They're right behind West Virginia, then UCF and Kansas are at the top. Of course, Arizona all the way at the bottom. Tied for bottom with Houston in terms of conference record, but their overall record is pitiful, 11-21. Just felt like I had to point that one out. But I think ASU's in a very good spot. They're 24-10, 7-5 in the Big 12, and they haven't played an easy schedule by any means. I think, Arizona's probably the quote unquote lightest Big 12 team they've played thus far, but they've already gone up against some pretty good teams in this conference, and it's a better year so far for the conference than it was this time last year. Plus, they had a really strong non-conference schedule, so I feel pretty confident about where they're at in terms of being battle-tested already and where they're at in the Big 12 standings. Of course, they play Utah this upcoming weekend that, we were kind of talking a little bit before the show about. That also seems like one where they should be able to clean up a little bit. But again, you've got these offensive players that any given night they can explode for double-digit runs. It's just a matter of can the pitching keep it together and just provide just enough relief to be able to get the win. More often than not, the answer is gonna be yes.
Definitely. The pitching has been better, I think, this year, and it's taken steps each year under Jeremy Accardo from what it was in these 2 years from what it was 3 years ago, or I guess two years ago, but it's the 2 seasons before this year. Math is hard as a journalist, but which is something that you need is to take steps forward. You're not gonna flip everything overnight. It's very hard to do that. As long as you keep taking steps forward, you're fine. I think that's something that to reiterate. Like, the pitching was great, and now it's kind of gone to good. I would say, and if it stays good, and your hitting's going to stay great, you're going to make do some damage in the postseason, get to Super Regional, which is where you ought to be more often than not. It feels like if you're the Sun Devils, so we'll see if they can do that. I do think this team is their ceiling. They can reach a Super Regional for sure, but will they? That's the question, and I'm not certain of that. I do think they're a lock for the tournament. I think they'll make a regional final. I just don't know if they'll win that game.
Right. Well, and a lot of it, I mean, I go back to last year's tournament, and honestly, I think they were better than what they showed in the tournament last year. They just happened to be in the same bracket as UCLA, who was an absolute juggernaut. And that definitely didn't do them any favors. So we're definitely getting ahead of ourselves talking about that part. But I agree with you, though, that at this point, if they were to somehow miss the tournament, something's gone horribly wrong. They're playing at a very high level right now. Of course, they're ranked right now. D1 Baseball has them as the number 20 team. And they've been ranked for a couple of weeks now, so they're getting national recognition, which is always a good thing. And very, very hard to not be excited about where the program's headed right now. But again, like you said, Super Regional is where they should be. And relative to the historical expectations for this program, realistically, College World Series is where they should be. Now, what they aspire to be versus where they're at right now, it's probably somewhere in between. but this is a team that still needs to figure a few things out before we can confidently say, like, more or less super regional or bust. But we are, like you said, we're heading in the right direction, which is always positive to see. Speaking of things heading in the right direction, Sun Devil football continues to hold their spring practices. They're working, they're growing, they're getting better. Clayton Smith, who we spent time talking about, because they listed him on offense and they were trying him out as a pass catcher. Kenny Dillingham did reveal he's still going to be a defender. He's still going to be an edge rusher. They'll use him in situations potentially on offense, but he is primarily going to be an edge rusher for them. Austin, I could see the happiness just drain from your eyes when I said that.
Well, not drained from my eyes. I mean, his place is on defense, but I'm looking forward to some surprise packages this season. I think we're going to get a couple instances where he's going to line up on offense. I'm hoping they're going to do the trick where he potentially wears a different number jersey to fool defenses. But yeah, no, I'm excited. I would be more concerned if this was a harder transition, as in like he's going to be primarily playing on offense. But we talked about in the previous episode that he's got a Shimon Mateer-esque build to him where he can fill in better on those run blocking and still have the ability to get out there and be physical on these passing plays. So I mean. Who knows? I mean, maybe they design a Sparky package with him. Like, you could go a whole lot of different ways with him on offense. So I'm excited to see what Kenny cooks up.
Yeah, bring back the swinging gate.
Right? Or like Red Foreman says, if executed properly, the jet sweep is unstoppable.
Exactly. But it's good, though, because I was a little worried at the whole, like, convert one of your best edge rushers into a tight end. But as soon as Kenny said that, I was like, all right, I knew you were still smart. I'm excited to see what they get cooking up there. Of course, the other thing that kind of made headlines that I want to close on too is Kenny Dillingham talking about his son will be this weekend at Pat's Run. And at least according, depending on when his T-ball game gets scheduled for. So I'm sure Kenny Dillingham has some pull somewhere. He's getting paid however much money. He's got influence. I'm sure he can talk to some people. But how many of us have participated in a Pat's Run? I'm just curious. Not to out anybody, but...
So I haven't participated in an in-person Pats Run, but I do it virtually every year. So I run 4.2, I log it, I'll post about it. I wear either my PT42 shirt or jersey when I go run. But I never made it to any of the Tempe runs. Or the DC chapter, I never made it to the couple when the DC chapter existed, and then it went away for a while, and now it's back. But no, I didn't do any of the in-person runs.
I haven't either.
Andrew, this is your year.
I will be there, though, covering it, so.
Okay.
I will not be running, but I will be covering it, so there's something.
I've done a Pat's walk. Not so big on the running, but I've done the Pat's walk. Did it, I want to say twice when I was in school. And haven't hopped on the virtual train, but I did recently find out that the chapter out here in Tulsa does an actual Pat's Run. So it's not in the cards for me this weekend, but one of these years I'm gonna do the Tulsa Pat's Run, and have that moment of solidarity. There's a surprising amount of ASU fans, alum, whatever they are, out here in Tulsa. I'm always surprised when the other day I saw somebody pull into my neighborhood and they had a ASU license plate cover. I wanted to follow them and follow them to their house and figure out who they were, but I obviously decided against that because it's Oklahoma and you never know what is going to happen in Oklahoma when somebody is worried about their security. But you know, we Sun Devils, we are everywhere, and that's the takeaway to have. So whether you're running this weekend in Pat's Run, or whether you're walking or virtually participating, I laugh at the concept of virtual running. I just think I picture somebody like on a PlayStation, like holding down the right trigger, you know?
I should clarify that it's just coming with a different term. But just like I do the run. I record it on Strava or whatever, and then I'll post it.
Okay. No, I hold down R2, and then my NBA My Player just runs really fast. So, but whether you are participating in Pat's Run or not, you know, there's always different ways to, you know, honor Pat Tillman's legacy, show your Sun Devil pride, and just in general be part of this amazing Arizona State community that obviously we all love, and we love covering it, and we will continue covering it here at Echo from the Buttes on devilsindetail.com as well. So for Austin Bundy, for Andrew Hazlett, until next time here at Echo from the Buttes, give 'em hell, Devils.